Hi, it's Shelley again. We're here today to color in this image of a skull. Excuse me. Um, I want to do more videos of my art and show you my process and encourage you, give you as much information that I can give from my years of knowledge and experimentation. And I just want to say, it's really hard to set up this particular camera to show what I'm doing in an be over the shoulders way. I don't have the bar that goes across the artwork, so I really can't do it perpendicular. But I think you can get the idea the way I have it set up here. I'll crop it a little bit, but I won't be able to rotate it because it's usually 90-degree rotation when I edit, and that would just make it going this way. So that doesn't work. Anyway, I have this skeleton and skull that I drew out. I sketched it out in a light orange pencil, colored pencil. I use colored pencils because regular graphite pencils smudge, and colored pencils, I think, have a certain amount of wax in them. And at least this type, and Crayola or whatever, they have a certain amount of wax that holds the color together. And so it doesn't smudge. And that's really helpful when you're drawing so that you don't have to worry about smudging the image. And then you can erase it because it's just a colored pencil. So it's kind of helpful. I think I used one like this for the base skull. And then most of it I sketched out of my head. And then I thought, well, I want to really know the details and how the skull looks. So I looked up a picture of an actual skull and put in some more details from that. The hat is all out of my head. And I wanted it to have a little bit of steampunk imagery. And also, like I said, last video on my sketchbook tour, hearts, I want to put a heart everywhere. This is kind of heart in his nose upside down. And then feather is another one of the images I really enjoy using. Just little things, butterfly for transformation, feathers for spirit realm, cogs for really kind of the mind. This is right there where the brain would be, and kind of third eye, and love. Everything has a little bit of imagery. And then I have a Scorpio moon, and death and rebirth is part of the Scorpio imagery. So those are the kind of general parts of this picture. And I'm going to pause for a second to go grab a marker that I've been using to illustrate. Okay, so I grabbed this marker. I have this gel pen, which I drew these guys in with, but they're a little bit finer lined and not as imposing, for lack of a better word. This is a Faber-Castell artist pen, fine artist pen. And let me look, I've got to get my glasses to tell you what point size it is. It's in black, which is also, I believe, an India ink. It's acid free, waterproof. It says India ink right on it. I don't see, oh, it's 0.7. So it's got a little bit of thickness, but it's not overly thick. So it gives a nice presence. And I want it to be a little bit more noticeable. I don't care about that, 4 years of working in abstract art while I was trying to develop a little looser style. And also something I've noticed from teaching a lot of people, mostly women, they are very perfectionistic. And I'm not going to be that person. I just don't want to be that person anymore. I have it in me from my youth. And somewhere along my adulthood, I realized perfectionism is kind of a killer of creativity and spirit, honestly. So I don't do that. I mean, I'm not saying I don't have it naturally, because I am kind of a natural perfectionist as a Virgo, but it really does kill creativity. It makes us way over self-aware of how things are, and it's really unnecessary. Art is art. We are human. We are not machines yet. And so you have to just allow it to flow. So right now, the thing I'm thinking of doing is the background, because I want to have something, I think it's just, I mean, there are two ways to go. You could definitely leave the background completely white, which would really make the image pop. And actually what I might do is just illustrate this first and see if I want a background. And if I do, I will go back in with my crayons and draw whatever it is, probably some type of, if you can see his eye, it's like concentric circles with lines coming out. I kind of like that. And maybe make some lines and then go in with darker color and let that crayon resist the watercolor and give it kind of a cool image. But I'm not sure that's what I want to do right now. Just to walk you through what I've got. So this is ink on watercolor paper. This is Hanson watercolor, and it's 11 by 15 inches. And I want a larger surface, but I hate not having the spiral bind, because I really think that's like this one. I think it's beneficial, and hardbound cover keeps it from warping, which we're going to use some water in a bottle, and that will help reconstitute our watercolors, which is a really quick and easy way to do it. And that's one thing I really do love about watercolors. I've got a palette over here. This is watercolor, gouache, and I think that's acrylic. So literally it hardened and dried, and you know, it's plastic on plastic, so it probably won't come up easily. If you want to use glass, the acrylic can be just scraped off with a razor blade. This is gouache. So if I sprayed it, it will reconstitute a bit and become thin. The only thing is, I think this is this is pretty interesting. I got gouache at Five Below, and I really like it, but you can see this is white. And you know what happens when it's wet and it stays in a dark place? It gets moldy. So I have alcohol, and I put alcohol in it, and this one's had alcohol mixed in recently. You can see it doesn't do that. So this one obviously has not had alcohol recently. This one has. So it will keep the bacteria or mold from growing inside of it. I'll kill that. That'll be no problem. But gouache is here, and it gets a little, you can see it kind of makes, there we go, makes a bit of curd, for lack of a better word. But when I just rubbed it there, you don't see it. So you can mix it in, no worries, don't care. Really be looser with everything. This is my advice to everyone in this day and age. Just be looser. Stop being so dogmatic and caring so damn much. I'm so over it. I'm literally ready to just say screw it. Anyway, one thing I did realize when I was sitting here looking at it is I want to have like an antique-y look. So I'm going to go over it with browns and maybe a little bit of red to give it kind of pinky tone. But I'm going to spray the whole thing. It'll be like a sepia background, so, or a tea effect. I spritz the whole thing. I like wet on wet when I do this. And then I also, part of using watercolors, I really love watching what happens with it. Look at how fun that is to watch where the color goes when you do this. And that's pretty dark for the image, you know, it's a skull. So one of the other things I started doing recently is pulling color back up. And I think that's a lot of fun too. So I'm just gonna give it kind of a rough edge, and you can even spritz it, whatever, it gives it a little mottled dots feel. But actually I'm gonna use the paintbrush. So because this is a skull and I want there to be highlights in certain spots, I'm going to pull some of the color back out so that it doesn't get too brown. And that's also another lovely technique you can use when doing portraiture. And this right here, the band on the head, on the hat, I really want there to be kind of a shine on the ribbon right there. So I'm going to take that off, and then I can use this dark as kind of a beginning tint to give me some light and shadow and contrast, so I know kind of where things are. And I like how this becomes striped a little bit. That's kind of cool. It makes it look like a shine or a sheen. And take that out. Then there's a highlight along the brim, think this brush right now is a little bit too big. So what happens when you use a dry brush, apparently it just blends it into the paper a little bit more. So we're gonna use some water and pull that up. So you have a nice little sepia effect going on. His teeth probably aren't as white as they are these days. And so that's just kind of a nice beginning coat for it. And now I'm gonna just use some of my colors. I think that's too big a brush. I tend to like using smaller brushes. Let's see if you can see it. This is one I got at, let me see. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is one of the ones I got at Michael's. I get most of my supplies at Michael's just because it's convenient. They have a good range of items. A lot of times I'll just buy my brushes in packs. And you can see they're all copper based. These ones are the copper ones. And then there's some other clear ones. I don't know. You can see this is a clear one. It came with some other brushes. This is wood. It probably was picked up a long time ago. But they come in packs. There's another copper one. So a different range of them. This one I use an awful lot for Mod Podge because sometimes I put paper on my artwork. And I will use this just for putting the Mod Podge on, which is basically a glue. And let me see if I can show you better. See, it's all messed up. So I use that for Mod Podge and then rinse it right away because otherwise it'll stiffen up and you'll ruin it with the glue. I use this brush for a lot of times for like line work because it's a really great brush for that. I like a fine brush with a flatter head to do some of the fine work there. And then this one's okay, but honestly, unless I'm doing dotting, the points aren't my favorite. I really like a flat head brush a lot more. I think I have more control with those. So, and then I've got a few thin ones over here. And I use this one for the detail work. Okay, so I'm just waiting for this to dry a little bit, but oh, and I didn't add any pink in it. That's okay. All right, let's see. What are we gonna do? I think I'm gonna add a base color, and this is kind of a technique I've been doing more lately. Adding kind of a darker base to parts of my paintings, and then I'll go back in with a lighter gouache, which will also blend a bit with that dark color. And it gives a really cool technique, and a cool effect when you go back in. After that dries a little bit, we'll go back in with the white gouache. And I think I'm gonna stop for a second and get some alcohol for my gouaches. Okay, so I just got 70% alcohol. I'm gonna open this guy up. I'm gonna pour this in. I should probably open them all up and make sure. There's a little cloud of mold that came out. That's probably too much alcohol. I'll just pour it in my little water cup. Kind of washes it away. I think there might be a little skin on that. And let's see if there is a skin. Yeah. It's like the texture of tofu, but I just mix it in. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't affect the color very much, but if you mix in the alcohol, it will obviously kill any of the mold spores or bacteria that's in there. You can see it came right back to life. So honestly, I will recommend this kit. This is the gouache kit at Five Below. Believe it or not, it looks like this. This is the lid. And it's got all these awesome colors in it. And the reason I like it so much is because it actually, oh, there's a little mold in that one. It actually does what I want gouache to do, which I haven't been able to find with the Michael's gouaches. They have a little bit of plastic acrylic in them and they don't reconstitute right. And this one, sorry, my arm was in the way, but you can kind of see all the really amazing colors that they have. And we'll find a few more moldy ones, I'm sure. Let's see, nothing else. Everyone seems to have had some gouache or clean water. I try to use clean water. I don't know what the heck gets into the water that would put mold in there, some type of bacterial spore or whatever. But yeah, it looks pretty good overall. So we're just gonna add a little hint in the dark green. And if you want to forward through this part, that's fine. I'm just trying to give you a little insight into what I do. So pour that into the water. I'll clean out the water too after I'm done mixing this up. Use the non-brush end of that. A little stir stick, if you will. Oh, I love that sound. Squishy, squishy. Oh. So now it's got some alcohol mixed in, it should be better. And it's somewhat thick, you know, it's a water-based paint. So you can add water to it to thin it out if you want. I don't mind it being thick because I use water as I paint. And I'm gonna go get fresh water real quick. Oop, there we go. Okay, so just clean, got a new paper towel, clean water, clean my brushes, and these guys look pretty good. So just now that this is dried a little bit, I'm gonna get a finer brush because this one's good. Okay, no, just cheap brush. I think this is just Artist Loft, or most of them Artist Loft or some variation thereof from Michael's, because I don't know, I just don't care. I'm gonna spend more because I don't need to. If there's something that's truly an exceptional quality and I'm working, you know, professional painting on commission, yeah, I might go a little bit fancier, but for this, these are like sketchbook paintings. I just don't care. Okay, so what we can do, we can use white, which is way up here. Let's turn it around. We can use white, which will blend with that, which is kind of a cool look. I'll even give you both. Or we can use a light blue, which already has some white blended in. And then we can add our veining, which, you know, it's kind of a cool effect. I'm gonna leave that because I'll probably do a different color on the edge. But you can just blotch it, which I kind of like a little bit of a blotchy painterly look. And it just adds more interest to the art, in my opinion. And this is a pretty little butterfly living, as opposed to this skull, who is definitely, well, he could be animated, but he's not living. Okay. So you can kind of get the idea of where the little veins of the wings are. I don't have a picture. I don't care, because part of the joy of painting is seeing what the effect becomes from what you do. And I think that when you look at artwork, you know, in museums or whatever, it's because the voice of the artist is in the artwork, not because they always have a good technical ability. I think if you marry technical ability with the voice of the artist, you're going to get a very unique piece of art. And that's kind of where I'm going towards with my artwork. And I just noticed this awesome light hitting the feather right there where that diagonal is, and that's going to be really awesome. So we'll take advantage of how that watercolor fell that way. Very cool. And then I'm gonna use this amazing purple. I don't know, should I do dark blue? I think purple. I'm a color person. So just, you know, it isn't a real butterfly in real life. I have never seen one that has this coloring. So it doesn't matter. That's my point. It's like, it doesn't have to be realistic. You don't have to compare what you're doing to anything to validate anything in the real world. It doesn't have to be validated. You have to validate it. It's your voice, your artwork, and that's all that matters. And I'm going to turn the fan up a little bit. There you go. It's still in the 80s here in Orlando, and a lot of humidity. And humidity is what makes it hot. It isn't 81 because it's been in the high 90s all summer. It's the humidity. So that's no bueno. We're not a fan. Oh, you may have caught that. I didn't catch that. Look at that. Some lovely little fluffy mold. Awesome. Very cool. Love that for me. Okay, let's get rid of that. And of course, the alcohol will evaporate out eventually. So I'm not worried about mixing it with alcohol. There are actually markers that are alcohol based. But because alcohol will just evaporate, see, it doesn't even change the color at all. Just mix it in so it doesn't do that again. And we'll get off all of that paint. Move it off. And then we'll do it to this one. And it thins it out a little bit, which, you know, let's be honest, it could use. I'm getting really messy. Look at how that is thinning out, which is good. See, interestingly, it thins out, but it doesn't turn translucent. It stays opaque. Wash, the awesome cousin to acrylics. And watercolor. It's like watercolor and acrylic had a baby. Okay, so let's see. I think, and this is kind of a strange order. I just did this to show you what I meant by the gouache overpaint. But what we're gonna do is we're going to, I'm sorry, I'm thinking for a second. I think what I want to do, and I'm hoping there's no mold, yeah, there's no mold on that. I want to go in to the hat. Normally black is the last thing I do, but I want to paint the hat because I'm going to do some additions of overpainting on it with the gouache. You see, that's really dark. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let the water that I spritzed on there just take it away. Because I want it to be kind of a felt feeling. So it's gonna be a softer feeling for the hat, not a hard one. It's not gonna be a solid jet black hat. And the reason we do black last is because black will blend with every color you have and muddy it. And you don't want that normally. But there's something about getting this in. And then the thing is, if you overshoot an edge and you don't like it, if you get it fairly quickly, it'll come right off. And then you can also water it down with a brush, you know, get some water in there and kind of work it a little bit. You just don't want to work it too hard because the paper, it's paper. It will disintegrate with too much work because it's just paper. So I'm going to add some water, come in here, blend it a bit. And I don't want to lose this edge. So I'm going to pull up some of the watercolor along there, or get that out of there. So I leave it modeled like that. It's kind of an old hat, you know, it's just an old hat. It can do that. And I'm going to add a little extra water in here on the rim, which will express the bleeding out. So we're going to leave that to bleed a bit. Right around the rim, and then my hash marks are giving me kind of an indication of the shading for that. I'm gonna wet my brush and just make a line along here. And then I'm gonna get actually probably a finer brush. Stay still, you hit yourself. I don't think that's been fine enough. Probably go with this one. This is the one I chose. And I'm gonna, way too much. And I use this palette too to kind of thin out the paint if I don't want it quite so concentrated. I'm gonna turn this, hopefully there's nothing to smear. And go along the rim. And what do I want to do? I think I'm gonna use a wide brush and kind of smooth it a little bit like that. And I don't know if you can see this. This is really cool. it's actually bleeding in a very fine amount around the edge. And I will show you closer and kind of see it up at the top right there. We got like felt. It's got a little fine felt. You know, not the best paper, not gonna lie. It's like, it's okay. But this book, actually, this particular sketchbook that I'm gonna do my next sketchbook tour of, pretty amazing for color. Let's see, look at the difference in how that color shows up versus that. It's really good paper. Like it. All right, and then you are starting to get a little wonky, but it's okay because like I said, this hat can be an old felt hat, no biggie. And then we're gonna do the rim. Excuse me. I think I wanna make his ribbon like a purpley satin. This is gonna be hard because it will bleed. There's a lot of water right there, but it's gonna bleed pretty good when I do this. Oh, shocking. See, that's what watercolor does. It shocks you. I thought it would do a lot more than it did, but what I'm gonna do is add some water to this brush and kind of encourage it. So I'm keeping in mind where the light hits, and the light's gonna be more shaded on the inside of the brim on the back with the hat blocking and the rim blocking the light. So I'm kind of adding a little extra dark to that spot, but I'm gonna blend it out with a little water. Here we go. And then probably here a little bit too. And let's see, the hat's still black, we still need to show that. A little bit of black over my hash marks. And then this is already wet. My paper towel, brand new paper towel, already soaking wet. And I can refine it a little bit like that. This probably blend that a little bit more. There we go. Okay. So for now, I'm gonna leave that to dry a bit, and I may go back in with another coat on the hat. But because I don't want to have too much saturation of the color, I'm gonna not do it all right now because I do have other things that will be colorful. I don't want to ruin. And this feather, it struck me that I would like to do that in kind of a metallic sheen. So I may go back in and touch that up at another point. I may have to stop the video for today. We'll see how far I can go. And in my mind, I wanted to add some colors somehow in the skull, and I'm not exactly sure how to do that. So maybe this is kind of funny. I do cartoony artwork, and if you follow me at all, you'll see I do a lot of cutesy things. I'll give you an example. This is one in my sketchbook. And I love the little rosy cheeks, so I might give them rosy cheeks. It's just something fun I want to do because it's my art and I can. So we'll just, what I do for rosy cheeks, put down a water, like a wash of water, and then you take the color. And this is just a very light amount that I got on my brush of the red. And so now I've just got little rosy cheeks, very soft, blushy, rosy cheeks. And then, let's see what color. And then again, this is a waterproof India ink. So I can paint over it, which is so awesome. I love to paint over it. I don't know what color should I put in there. Maybe a dark purple to fill in those eerie eye holes. But because it's concentric circles, you can tell it looks kind of like there's an eye in there somewhat looking back out. Eerie. Of course, I started this on November 1st or 2nd, right after Dia de los Muertos. So, okay, we're gonna do the ribbon and put down a layer of water. And I'm doing it with my brush because I have more control over it, and it is the brownie. See how the black kind of bleeds into that? That's why I usually say black for last. But over here, I've got this really pretty purpley plum color, and it's really plasticky. It was a cheap set of watercolors, and so that's not very good. We're not going to use that. Probably this one is much better. And I've got a little bit, I think I'll use this one. Do you see that? Yeah. I've got a little bit of brown on there, so that's not gonna hurt because I'm gonna add in probably the orange red, which will give a really rich kind of plummy, strange looking color. Like a deep blood red almost. We'll add some purple to that over it too. So I went back over with water and just let it bleed. And because the shading is more of a vertical, I want to keep with that grain vertical and not do just the horizontal. So you can see how it goes. Here's the light source and then it shades towards the side. Now this side, a little bit more in shadow. I'm going to lay down some darker purple in the shadow. And then I'll do the plum over that. A little sloppy. I see that. Just push that up a little bit. And then rub some off. So we have the gradient, but you know what? We want a little shading darker underneath the feather. And I'll add some darker shadow over there under the feather, ultimately. Okay, and then we'll go back in with this color. And I'm just gonna have to go back in. This brush is a little bit wide, so I'll go back in with that and touch it up. Pull off light. Mix in some of the purple and pull off some of the slop over from the edge. And of course we have black on that brush. Shame on you. That'll blend in with the background anyway, because this is probably going to get a background. And I don't know if you can see this, but there's a slight bleed of color right here. I love that. I love having things look a little bleedy along the edges, because to me, it kind of adds to a vintagey feel. And it just, nothing is black and white, people. It's not black and white. So to have a little shadowy bleed on the outline of it, love it. Love, love, love. That's cool. Look at that. How cool does that look? And then that will just get blended out with the background and whatever. Okay, feather, and then we're probably going to wrap this up because I don't even know how long it is at this point. And then you can see the final one on my website. On my, actually, if you go to Instagram, which is where I put a lot of my postings of paintings. Instagram is Artful Shelley on Instagram, at Artful Shelley. This guy will probably get a bit of Posca pen in gold metallic to highlight that. And if I have like a copper or a brown metallic, I will do that. Okay, so what I'm going to do with the feather I'm gonna clean my water first. Hang on a second. Well, you don't have to wait for that. We'll just pause. Okay, fresh clean water we love, and maybe let's rotate this or flip it a little bit so it's a little bit cleaner. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna take my clean water and give a little wash on the feather specifically. So I can get a nice sheen. And probably something I will do with this feather is add a little bit more refined detail to it. But I think I'm gonna start with a peacock blue over here in the crease. How pretty is that? Oh my God. Yeah, so pretty. And then just fan it out. So I might not have to go back in with details if I do this right there. And then some regular blue on the outside. Definitely kind of like a peacocky effect. Cool. Love, love, love. Let's just trace along the edge of that feather. And then use the color going back in with a cleaner brush. I'll go up around there. And then just pull the color across the feather from what's already there. Hope I'm not going too fast for everybody. Look at how beautiful that is. Yay! I love it. Love, love, love. And we'll give it a little bleed on the outer edge because we already went over that. There we go. And I'll fan that out too. Feather it out. There we go. Yeah, if it turns out nice enough, I may not do a background. We'll see. That'll actually, I don't think that will show up when it dries, but we'll just feather it to make sure. And then we'll do the other side. So let's give it some water along the edge of the quill. There we go. That stalk up the middle is the quill. And we'll go in our peacock blue. Peacock blue is just kind of like a green blue, tealy color. And we'll go along that. Go get a little bit more thick version of that. And this brush itself has kind of a feathery, you can see a very fine hair at the end. So it's gonna not completely be like blunted. It has a little bit of a feather, so it is good for making feathers. And then the last thing I want to say about this, as far as executing it and the color and the highlights, is we can use our white. I'm just going to show you briefly. Let me see, where's my lid for white? I probably should spritz the lids also with the alcohol so they don't bring in more stuff. But the white can bring highlights back to it, but then it blends really quickly. So what happens is you want to keep it as unwatered as you can while using it. Like you want the white to stay solid, and you can kind of see how that adds to the dimension and the highlight of what you're doing. And yes, I dip the color back into the white, but what happens is I'm taking so much of the paint that it doesn't leave the darker color, it just takes the lighter color. So everything is calculated because my brain works like that. Ah. Anyway, blend that a little bit with the purples, bring them in. So pretty. Oh my gosh, I love those color combinations. And then you've got the top ridge of that, which the purple kind of is a nice counter to it, but I really like the blue. So I'm going to come back in here with the blue along the edge. And the other thing is when you paint, your hand makes a natural arch. Work with that arch. Put your paper, turn your paper if you have to, because it makes such a nice smooth line in that arch formation. So I'm gonna do this, and now you can see the sheen. And then because that slopped over in a hard edge, I don't want the hard edge, I'm gonna bleed that feather out with some water. Ta-da! So yeah, I hope that helps. We're gonna pause it here for now. And Maybe I'll come back and do a little bit more shading around the skull and do the cogs and more of the black of the hat. But for now, that's where we're stopping. So this is the final video. I'm going to color in the hat. And what I like to do in my art is a bit of mixed media. So we started out with the color pencil drawing, added watercolor, there's gouache, there's ink, and we have color pencil. And so far I think that's probably all I'll do. But I want to add more richness to the look of the black on the hat. And I think I need to add a little more dimension to the skull. So, oh, and I want to color this in too. And so we're going to add some watercolor and add some watercolor to the feather. Let's do that first. So, small brush. I don't know. Let me see where it is. There we go. Down. Just a teeny little brush. And we're going to spritz our paint with some water because it's the quickest way to reconstitute it and get it wet, and try not to dip our brush into our coffee. So thank you very much. We're gonna do this basically just wet, not wet on wet, wet on dry. I'm gonna have to move my coffee out of the way. I will dip it in that. So we don't want to do that. And a little bit of blue, starting at the base of the quill for the shading. And we'll do that. I guess a little bit of dimension. We might touch it up with some color pencil when it dries. Make sure there's no water anywhere. Okay, so color pencils. I have Crayola, and I can't quite read that. Artista, something like that. Crayola is pretty good. It has a fairly rich coloring ability, so you can kind of see here what it looks like. And then one of the other things I like to do is, sorry, there's some motorcycle going by, probably hear it. Anyway, using Derwent ink tints, they're color pencils that you can add water to and make them into watercolors. Really love that. It's a very, very good product, but I'm not going to do that with this one. So we're just really, what I'm trying to do is add a little bit of texture and then add a little bit of richness of the color saturation. And you can see the texture coming in there because really I want this to be like a felt hat. So you need a little bit of texture for felt hat. And then I'm going lighter and lighter over that highlight right there, a bit darker up here. And then there we go. And I'm not going right up to the feather because I kind of want that bleeded color there. Fill that in. You can kind of see a little bit of texture over the hat because felt will come off of the hat a bit. It isn't a very smooth surface. It actually, and I'll probably do it here too, it has a texture, you know, it has like a little fuzzy surface. So we want to show that texture along the brim, darkness in the shadows. The brim is pretty good. I mean, I like the brim almost the way it is. I'll add a little bit of texture. I like the highlight. I think it looks real, or realistic, I should say, highlighting. And darker along the bottom. Make that a little bit richer. And then the top of the hat, which is kind of, it's annoying me because this highlight makes it look like that recedes down in, like it's sunken, which it is not. So I have to figure out how to shade it so it doesn't look sunken in. And I think the solution is to not put a highlight on this side of it. So the highlight kind of continues around the whole rim. And if you do that, then it's gonna look like that is higher, sitting higher on the hat. And we don't want that. So as you can see, by darkening that highlight, it kind of takes away that effect of it. I like this little bleed here from the watercolor. It's kind of cool. Gives the felt feel. Okay. Darkening up the hat. And I'm cross coloring so that I don't get like a single directional line from my crayon or my color pencil. A little bit of texture and the highlight. There we go. Now, does that look like? I think we're gonna do this too. Maybe a little bit darker here. Again, I just don't want that to look like it has a rim that goes all the way around. There we go. Much better. Okay. Shading here. There we go. Okay. Now, should we do a little bit inside the sockets, make them a little bit darker? I really want the ink hatchings to show. So I don't want to go too dark. Maybe like that. It makes it a little more mysterious. I think I want to do some point. I don't think I want it quite so black. I like how the brown on the blue with the sepia background gives it kind of a vintagey feel. It gives it, somewhere between vintage photographic with the sepia and somewhere in like the early 1960s or 50s advertising era where they used a lot of the printing process was different, so they had to overlay the colors in a different way, and it was much more, it was like not as dimensional as it is today. We have such a hyper saturation of what we do in printing now, but back then they did a lot of spot printing is the term for it, where they take a solid color, just a single color, and then print it, and another single color and print it, as opposed to CMYK, which gives you the broad range of all the colors. Back then it was, I think, a little bit more spot printed, where say if they wanted teal in it, they wouldn't combine the yellow and the blue and hints of red to make that kind of cool bluish color. They would just take a solid ink color and do the dots and make it just that ink color on the printing press. So spot color. Anyway, that's all. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. And here's my skull with a hat. Take care.